Okay, everybody, a huge welcome to all of you. It is really so amazing that at last this is all happening, and we're so thrilled that we got so many people. We got more than a third of our class here today. Well, they're not all quite on yet, and after 51 years, that is pretty good. Altogether, we've got about 50 email addresses. Some people couldn't come on, they're in the bush, they're sick, blah, blah. So why are we a year late for our reunion? That's because last year there was a reunion during Alumni Week, and only 7 of us read the WITS notes on Alumni Week and saw that there was a Zoom. They have a special Zoom for all the special years, for the years of 50 and 60, etc. So, 7 of us who were on, Keith, me, Janine Gordon, Nan Jolly, Pat McPhail, and Roy Shires. So we had our little Zoom there that day, and it was absolutely fabulous to chat to everybody, but we wondered where everybody else was. During that meeting, Paul Davis came on, and she said, I think most of you know Paul Davis. He works in conjunction with the alumni office. And he said the reason for that was that there were no names, hardly any names on the alumni office's mailing list, and there were no email addresses at all. So he said, would there possibly be anybody who could perhaps find a few names with a view to holding a Zoom for more people in 2020. So I thought, how difficult can this be? We've got Google and Excel and everything, not like when I did a school reunion years ago.
2022.
And what could possibly go wrong? So I started sort of collecting names and doing very slowly. And my husband's got itchy feet. We're always somewhere else. And I just never got going. And we were away for 6 weeks at the beginning of the year in January and February. And I was feeling very despondent. Then in March, Saya Beaton, out of the blue, phoned me and said, can she come and visit me? Her daughter lives down the road from me. She's just found out. And so we had a fabulous afternoon. I said to her, couldn't she help me? I need moral support. I need enthusiasm. So then I also found Keith, who I know very well, and I said to him, would he also be on a little group with us? And then I remembered On was from our previous Zoom last year, and he said, yes, he would love to come on. And I know he was interested because he kept sending messages to Didi to say, what's happening, what's happening. And then Keith gave me Pete's number, email address, and before we knew it, we had 10 Americans, we had 10 Aussies and New Zealands, and everything started moving. And we had the most fabulous time together. Our WhatsApp group's called the Famous Five, and we got on, helped each other, shared lists, technical know-how, suggestions, and whatever. And we also had a couple of Zooms, which were very helpful and also very hilarious with all the very witty people in the group. That's not me. I'm not witty at all.
Witty.
Yeah, I'm not. So I want to say to my team, to Keith, On, Pete, and Saya, an enormous thank you, really, for just getting everything going and giving their unstinting cooperation and support. And after this last 3 months of intensive Zooming and WhatsApping and emailing and jokes, it's going to be very quiet. I'm going to miss all the banter. So thank you. I also want to thank Didi, whose voice you heard just now. She works in the alumni office. She did all the names. She made interminable versions of the lists. She did connections with the main office. She did detective work when the Wits computer flatly refused to send invitations to certain people. And they eventually sorted that glitch out, and she's running this Zoom meeting as we speak. And she was always fantastic, always available to help us. And thank you very, very much, Dee Dee, from all of us. So this meeting is being recorded. You'll all get a video later. You'll all get a list of the class with all the email addresses of people who gave permission for their emails to be circulated. You know about the POPI legislation in South Africa. You're not allowed to share anybody's email addresses without their written permission. And so that was a big problem. We couldn't just put out a list and, before people had even registered.
You have to cut it a bit shorter.
Okay, I'm almost done. But all of you, reconnect with each other. Have Zooms, join up with your firms. We've had such a marvelous time, and you can all also enjoy your old friends. This year it's a centenary. There are lots of things on offer. Just read through the stuff, and I know they also always ask for donations. So that's all up to you, but it is your alma mater if you feel like doing anything like that. So that's all that I've got to say in my official capacity here as, I don't know what, the starter, the collector of names. So then I'm going to just say a few words. So I'm getting, we all getting allotted slots of 3 minutes. Very, very hard to say your life in 3 minutes. So I'm just going to say a few words. I had the most low-key medical career of anyone in the class. I started doing anesthetics, passed my anesthetic primary. When I was pregnant with my first baby, I worked at Barra. I didn't like anesthetics, eventually stopped doing it. I did a bit of volunteer work at church clinics for vagrants and hobos. And during that time, I did my DTM and H, which I absolutely loved. Then I had baby 2, and then 8 years later, I had baby 3. And baby 3 was, he was born 8 years after his sister with pulmonary atresia. So that was a huge, terrible blow to us with this very sickly baby. He had 2 surgeries by Rob Kinsley, who you probably all knew in the old days. Both were successful, and I have to say that Keith Bolton was a pillar of strength to us, pediatrician and friend, absolutely marvelous. That baby is now 37. He's got an implanted defibrillator. He's in atrial fib. He's had 2 failed cardioversions, anticoagulants, got a large right atrium. He's got a bicycle, which he can only ride on the Cape Town Promenade, which is very flat. He's got a degree in actuarial science and a master's in financial maths, both from Cape Town. He's got a lovely Slovakian girlfriend of 3 years. He's got a 5-year Czech cohabiting visa, and they live in Prague, and they recently got engaged in their favorite place, Kruger Park. He thinks he's a normal young man with no problems, except getting his meds in Prague with a South African script. He's got the most unbelievably positive outlook in life that you could ever believe. And he's what's the word? We all got to look up to him for the way he conducts his life when he's got such a horrible heart. My other 2 kids are, one's an orthopod, one's an ophthalmologist. They're both healthy, sporty, hardworking, and happy, and they've given us 5 grandchildren. The worst things in my life are cleaning and cooking meals every day. And everybody else will agree. I still do my old hobbies, sewing, gardening, reading. In my late 40s, we started hiking, and in my late 40s, I ventured further afield, climbed Kilimanjaro, went to Everest Base Camp, did other Himalayan treks, climbed Mount Kenya, hiked in the ruins, Auris, etc. So I love outdoors and I love mountains.
4 minutes and counting.
Yeah, okay. I bought a bike. I did 8 Augusts. We still cycle every day. In fact, I can hear my husband in the background setting off on our Saturday morning bike ride, which I'm missing today. I have to say I'm very mediocre at all these things that I do, slow but sure, and I always finish, but never near the front. We do lots of camping, 4x4s. We did a fabulous trip to East Africa and for 3 months living in my rooftop tent, and we love that. And I'm not going to tell you anything else about my travels, but I want to say that even though I never lived up to my medical potential, I've had a fabulous life with very exciting adventures, and it's been great. So now I'm going to hand over to Saya. So she's going to she's going to give first, we're going to have a slightly somber few minutes.
She'll tell you what she's doing.
Would you like to speak?
So yes, we are going to remember the people who've passed away. But first of all, Patsy, from the 4 of us, you have been absolutely awe-inspiring. I don't think everyone realizes the blood, sweat, and the tears that went into this because there was no list. Pat started from the beginning. She rounded us all up. It was a bit like herding stray cats, but we eventually settled on, there are about, from here, maybe a third in South Africa, a third in America, and a third in down there, down the bottom, whatever they call it. And Peter and Keith and Arne and Patsy as well, we have had a fabulous time reconnecting, and I hope you all enjoy it as well. But from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much. And to Dee Dee and to Paul Davis. We are actually hoping to have another one in 2026, which will be a 55-year reunion, and we actually buttering Pat up, so she'll do it again. So that's the first part. Thank you very much. Then I've also been asked to mention, very sadly, our classmates who have passed away. I certainly remember many of them with very fond memories. I'm going to read their names, and we'll have a little while of silence and our sympathies and our condolences to their friends and their families. Norman Alderton, Jeff Cole, Harry Copans, Tony Dempster, Brian Escreet, Tony Collar, Joe McKibben, Carl Moller, Mike Quayle, Ian Siegel, and Krista Blanche. So now, because I'm talking already, this is my, hopefully Keith's very short bio. It is not easy to squish 50 years into 3 minutes. So it's not a chronological order. 10 years after I graduated, I drifted around, had a ball, lived in London for a year, went skiing at every possible moment whenever I had the money, mainly in Europe, eventually in Argentina. I got married to Russell Giles, who sadly passed away 30 years ago. At that time, I did a year of GP practice, which really wasn't for me, pediatrics, which I loved. And then I finally settled on dermatology, which was just right. I've been a dermatologist. We moved to Pietermaritzburg 40 years ago. And I think I'm sort of part of the furniture. So I've been seeing patients for 40 years and they still come back 20, 30, 40 years later. And I think that's one of the gratifying things that I've enjoyed so much about my practice, because I was a fairly reluctant medical student and not a very enthusiastic doctor for many years. But once I got into it, it's been fabulous. I have a son and a daughter, and recently they've covered themselves in glory because they've given us 4 precious grandchildren. Along the way, we've kept horses, we've ridden, I've hiked horse boxes all over the country to shows and to championships for my children. But then eventually, as it happens, they grew out of their horses, and the 3 of us, they were in their late teens, all took up scuba diving, which if you've never looked under the ocean, is the most magical thing I can possibly imagine. It was wonderful, mainly on the South African coast, Mozambique, Sodwana, Alawal Shoal. We tried Vietnam, but the viz was like pea soup, so that was pretty bad. But my children have carried on scuba diving, mainly Mozambique, but also in Zanzibar. They've discovered Zanzibar with a vengeance. I also played golf for quite a long time, and those of you who play golf, you can know how obsessed you can get about it. So I was totally immersed in golf. When 12 years ago, I met my wonderful partner, Gavin, and he introduced me to cycling, which has also been an all-consuming passion. Road cycling mainly. We've done the big races around South Africa, and we've also had 2 amazing experiences overseas. One, sorry for those of you who don't cycle, we followed the last 10 days of the Tour de France. You cycle for part of the morning, you sit, no, 2 more minutes, 2 minutes. And we've also done a cycle around London, a horse trail in the Okavango, which was amazing, and a canoe trail down the Orange River. And I'm going to sit back and enjoy listening to all of you. Okay, done.
Hi, people. Sorry, I'm the Mr. Bad Guy. There's always a good cop and a bad cop, and I'm the bad cop, and I'm going to tell you when your time is up. I'm sorry, it's what I'm paid to do. Right, I'm Keith Bolton. My little 3 minutes goes like this. Graduated with all of you, went to Klerksdorp, which was fun, came back, did PEDS, stayed at Barra for 15 years, was lucky enough to be sent to England to learn how to be a neonatal, to run a neonatal unit for a while. Came back, opened the first neonatal ICU, which was sort of a dedicated one. We used to ventilate all over the place and in the wards and in the PEDS ICUs and in adult ICUs, but we started a neonatal ICU. Anyhow, I stayed at Barra a decade or so. Then I got an itchy foot and went off to private and spent 9 years at Garden City Clinic, where they had just opened maternity. So I started a neonatal ICU at Garden City Clinic. Then I realized I wasn't made for this because I was losing money. I know of no other doctors who lost money in private practice, but I managed to. Too many colleagues as patients, I think. And then I went and saw the light, went to Cora in 1998 as head of the Department of PEDS there. I'm still there. That's 25 years later. I retired 10 years ago, sort of. I'm more tired than retired. And I now work a 30% job at Rahima to keep the wolf from the door. I do medico-legals. As all of you know, that's blood money. I've given 350 opinions to the courts, mostly regarding CP. And don't tell them that I'm biased, but always defending our colleagues and not in down the sort of dark alleys. Right. And then from a personal point of view, I habitually marry nurses. My first wife, Jean, I was married to for 35 years. She gave me 3 children. Andrew, an engineer with Total Oil or Total Energy, which is the PC word now. He's given me 4 beautiful grandchildren. They all give me, well, Nachas and Soros. I don't have to explain that to most of you, as all of the grandchildren give you Nachas and Soros. Anyhow, the highlight is a week ago, my grandson, Bryce, aged 18, came to borrow my 4x4 so that he could go to the bush and do some 4x4ing. So believe me, you've got trouble coming. And then my daughter, Carolyn, is a doctor in Zambia. She works in HIV research. She's attached to the University of Arizona, although she's never there. And she's published, Google her, you can see she does mainly epidemiological research. She's given me 2 wonderful grandchildren in a most fantastic way. I have to spend 30 seconds telling you that she couldn't have children for medical reasons. And so my wife, the second wife, the vicious stepmother, was the surrogate to my grandchildren in Zambia. So I have 7-year-old twins, Leia and Liam, who lay next to me in bed trying to kick their way out of my wife's abdomen. Anyhow, going back to Jean, it's a bit roundabout. We got divorced, but then ultimately, unfortunately, she passed on. But she and Verena became the best of friends. Nothing to bond you to your family like being a surrogate mother when you're 50 years old. Okay, and then I've got Patsy. Patsy's a doctor in Australia, down under. She's in Brisbane. She flies planes with her husband, who's a pilot. Well, he's not a pilot, he's an aeronautical engineer. And she works for the Australian Aviation Association, grounding pilots medically. She's not a popular lady. She's lovely. She does part-time work in the hospital and she teaches medical students. Okay, so that's my sort of social life. I'm happy. I've got Calvin, my stepson. He joined me when I married Verena, and that was when he was 5. He's now 25. He's an engineer in Natal, in Richards Bay. And then what do I do? I'm old. I'm retired. We've just moved into an estate. And I do what all the old people do. I fart around and walk the dogs. And we're going to start traveling again. We used to travel quite a bit now that COVID's done. And that's me. Right. So that's how you should be. I'm supposed to spell it out to all of you. Your turn's coming almost immediately. So about 3 minutes. Otherwise, you see the terrible T. Okay. And watch that space for the terrible T. And we're going to divide up into 3. On is going to do the Yanks. Peter's doing the Antipodeans, and I'm doing the Saffers, the South Africans. They're about a third. I'm doing the South Africans last. We did the Americans first because we knew they'd start to nod off pretty soon. On, I'm handing over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. So yeah, I've got pretty much the whole background of how we all got together. And because we are Americans, North Americans, I pushed and forced all my compadres.
Can you just speak up a little?
Yeah, so because we're Americans, I pushed that we're going to usurp our position, and North Americans are going to go first. So I'll give you a brief thing on my bio, which I'm going to make a lot briefer than what my predecessors have done. I don't have a very exciting life. And then we're going to start with the East Coast and then move across the United States. Hopefully I can recognize people and not diss anybody. And then we'll finish off on the West Coast. So briefly, we all graduated in 71, did internship. First, my medical internship was with Izzy Grech at the Gen, and Larry Distillo was my chief resident or registrar, what they call in South Africa, a diabetologist. And I decided at the end of that 6 months, I was going to become a diabetologist. I applied for Seftel's senior houseman job, but Velda Goldberg beat me to it, so I lost out on that job. The next 6 months, I was with Patsy and Pat McPhail, who, I don't know if he's online, but was with us before with Bert Myberg, and surgery was wonderful. And then fortuitously, one day I was called down to Duplessis' private ward to put an IV in a VIP patient. So I went into the side ward and Philip Tobias was lying in the bed. He needed an IV for an IV cholangiogram because he's having a gallstone attack. So I put in the IV, got it right the first time, and he said to me, "Sinman, what are your plans?" I said, "Well, I've just been dissed for diabetes." So he said, "If you ever want to do a surgery, give me a call and we'll get you the table doc job." So long and the short, I did the next year table doc, went down the surgical route as they say, in South Africa. Loved orthopedics under Lou Solomon, had applied to do the orthopedic residency registrarship in South Africa. My wife, Renee, South African, 52 years coming up, married. I think it's lucky she hasn't killed me yet, but anyway. We wanted to go to Europe. We'd never been to Europe. So I had a 3-month gap in senior SHO position. And then when we got back, I had nothing to do for 3 months before orthopedics. I did urology, which I didn't really have any interest in. Loved that. Finished off as Van Blerk's registrar. at that time, Soweto had blown up, and I decided with our family, it's time to get out of South Africa. We had met the chief of urology at UCLA, who was a world-renowned urologist. He said to me, if you're ever thinking of coming to the States, give me a call. I was corresponding with A.D. Graf Radford, who's doing his orthopedics at UCLA, so I already had a contact there. Long and short, 1980, we left South Africa on a short-term visa, but with view to staying in the States. And this is where I've been ever since, in Los Angeles. Finished off at UCLA, was going to go into academia as a pediatric urologist, didn't work out, went to the dark side, joined private practice. I'm now one of 10 urologists in a very visible urology practice called Tower Urology. You can look it up on the website if you're interested. I took my interest from Bert Myberg and Rene Buerter, and renal transplantation was my thing, which I did for 35 years at Cedar Sinai, kidney transplantation. And then I stopped doing surgery about 10 years ago, but still full-time private practice. Renee, my wife, is a very busy landscape architect, has her own business, 2 kids. My son had just graduated Columbia University with a master's degree, and he calls himself a futurist. He has great ideas of saving the planet, and hopefully he'll succeed. My daughter, second child, surprising to me, did urology, and each time she said she was going to do something blew my mind, because I thought she was a great artist, and was in San Francisco, and about 3 weeks ago relocated to Los Angeles, and now live around the corner from us with her husband, Juan Kim, who's a GU oncologist, and 2 grandkids, 2 rambunctious, obnoxious, spoiled American grandkids called Eli and Caleb, half Korean, half Jewish, and a great combination. And that's my simple life. And now I'm going to go down, and I know John Said's on the East Coast, and I'm going to call John to give his thing, and then we'll go from there. Thanks.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
John Said, my life has been somewhat uneventful and boring. That's the way I like it, so I can easily do it in 3 minutes. I left Wits, very grateful for my training there, and so nice to see everybody here. Went to Harvard, trained there in pathology, became what's called a lymphomaniac. I love studying lymphomas, and I'm still doing it. I have not retired. Became an assistant professor at Harvard, then moved to UCLA, where I'm a professor and vice chair for research at UCLA. So still studying lymphomas. I married my wife, Patricia. We met at the beach, on the beach at Clifton. I needed a date for Saturday night, so beware. And we just had our 50th anniversary. We have 3 wonderful children and 9 grandchildren. So I'm hoping I've got the record for grandchildren. I don't know, I'll find out. So thanks to everybody. It's great seeing everybody here.
So the next person I have is Hilton Becker, who said he was going to be part of this. I don't recognize him. So Hilton, if you are here, you up. I'll give you 1 second to reply. I think I did recognize Brian Steingo. Brian, are you up? He's in Florida. Was that you, Brian? I guess all the East Coasters have given up. Is that you, Brian?
I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I thought it was you.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, when we were sent the time said from 9 in US 9 to 12. So I assumed
Starting.
I probably assumed like others that it was the meeting was from 9 to 12. But anyway, it's midnight, so it's midnight here. So we will retire early. But I like the way Jonathan did it. I'm going to say briefly, I've been in the US for about 45 years. I'm a neurologist practicing in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I still practice. I'm still working. My practice is limited to the treatment of multiple sclerosis. So here in sunny South Florida, about 90 degrees today. I treat people only with multiple sclerosis. I'm the director of the MS Center. Our center is comprehensive. Besides treating patients clinically, we do a lot of research. And in addition, I do programs for the dark side, pharmaceutical stuff, doing quite a lot of traveling. As many people have said, Jonathan too, my wife and I have been married for 50 years. We have 2 kids, one who lives very close by, which is a blessing, and one who lives in Chicago, which is not such a blessed city these days. We have 3 grandkids. Our oldest grandson just started college. I think that's the most important thing for me to say. My hobbies are essentially, we've liked to travel until the last 2 years when a little virus intervened. Although recently we have been to the Galapagos and the next month off to Morocco. But I like photography. That's been my hobby, doing a lot of photography. And my hobby in the last decade has been Lego. Not sure if anyone else here is doing Lego. That started out of my grandkids, and they abandoned the hobby, and I continued the hobby. There is a whole big, huge section of Lego for adults. So that does keep me sane when I get home from treating my patients.
Oh,
So,
fabulous.
Nice to see everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So Keith Davidge Fitz, I see you are there. They said you are in the United States, but I could never track you down. So unmute your thing and tell me where you've been hiding.
Unmute.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I've had a busy life, and lots of things have happened in my life. And basically, from a medical side of things, after my house jobs, I did general surgery and did a fellowship in Edinburgh. In fact, with Theo Gregor, the 2 of us were there at the same time, and we did our FRCSs there. We did our primaries there, and then our secondary FRCSs. And my interest in general surgery was mostly head and neck surgery, the neck side of things. So I ended up doing otolaryngology and got an FCS in that, and subsequently got the Michael and Janie Miller Fellowship from the Department of Surgery, which sent me to the States to do fellowships. And I was at Mount Sinai in New York and MD Anderson in Houston, primarily doing the work that I was interested in. And then my dad got very sick. So in fact, at the end of that fellowship, I actually came home because I probably would have stayed on, and because things were going pretty well then. So I went back, and I ended up going back into private practice and had a very lovely private practice life. And my wife, Marilyn, did her registrar time as a physician, and she's a medical oncologist. And we obviously are both retired now. And just the other thing, it's so wonderful to see everybody, and thank Pat for doing all of this. It's really been a great thing, to happen. So thank you. We've got 2 children, 2 girls, and the reason that we now live in the States is because of them. My eldest daughter, Caroline, who's 40 now, is associate professor and vice chair of endocrinology at Mayo Clinic, which is why we live in Rochester now. And she's done very, very well, and a Wits graduate, of course. And my other daughter is an investment banker in New York, although the last 8 years she's just been bringing up children. But she did a Cape Town business science degree, and then did an MBA in New York. And she's been there all that time. And we've had a wonderful life of as Saya was saying, riding horses, skiing, scuba diving. We've had a wonderful life, and we now have 4 grandchildren, and we all happily, Marilyn and I are happily retired, and we're spending a lot of time with the grandchildren. And we've just come back from 10 days of Sea Island, because we've also been married 50 years. Now the whole family went there for 10 days, and we had a lovely holiday. So we've just come back from that. And apart from that, life continues. We've had all the medical issues that we've had. I see Brian Stein go, your brother was busy in my heart. And I had Ian Diamond fix a knee. And then soon after arriving in Rochester, I had to have a kidney taken out. So that'll interest you on. So Bradley Leibovitz, I'm sure you know him. And apart from that, I'm well. My last scans and stuff were fine. So life continues and you take it day by day. So thank you very much. And it's lovely just listening to everybody talking.
Thanks, Keith. So
How's my
moving
time?
across, Dave Friedman, I think you probably the next guy in the mid, wherever you are, Texas, some weird place in Texas, but you unmute your, yeah. Go for it, Dave.
It's just a delight. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. It's 10 minutes to 12 at night, and I couldn't wait for this time to come. I'm so excited to see everybody after 50 years. This is my wife, Elizabeth, who's I met after I came to the United States. I've been here for over 40 years. I came to do a PhD at the University of Chicago, which I finished. Then after doing pediatrics in South Africa with Keith and everybody else who's in the pediatric field, then I wanted to go back to South Africa while in the middle of my PhD, and had plans to finish my PhD, but then continue in South Africa. So I went back to the Institute for Medical Research, the SAIMR, where I had initially started, but found there wasn't really a position for me. So I came back to America to complete my PhD, met Elizabeth, and we have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Once I'd done my PhD, I continued in pediatrics at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And then I did postdoctoral work at the Worcester Institute across the street. And then I had trouble with visas, with my visa. It went on for a long time. And I switched to adult medicine. And I had a job in adult medicine and hematology in San Antonio. And from there, I was offered a position as the director of a bone marrow transplant program in Fort Worth. So I switched to pediatrics again and ran an adult and pediatric transplant program.
Hi, Andy.
And then I went back to adult medicine exclusively. So I'm an adult oncologist, actively practicing, happy to be working and enjoying my work. My primary interest is outside medicine is fly fishing, which I love to do. It takes me outdoors, and so that's basically where we are. So wonderful to see everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. So I think Robert Medunio, who's in that Wild City, Las Vegas, the last time I heard, I think you're probably up next. If I've gone over anybody, just put the gun image up to my head, and then I'll get back to you. So Rob Medunio.
Vegas. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No? Yes.
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 Okay. All right. And I've been, maybe I'll go backwards. I don't know. I've been retired for about 6 months. And starting off at the Gen in Mr. Lannon's unit. Then decided that I would do OBGYN and really didn't like the program at Wits, so I transferred down to King Edward's, where I saw every single OBGYN complication in the book in one day. Okay. And then I decided to come to back to the US because I was originally from New York, and went to Lubbock, Texas, at Texas Tech University, where I finished off my chief residency because I was able to get into that position because it was a brand new program. So I have the distinction of being the first chief resident in OBGYN in Lubbock, Texas. Woo! Not an Ivy League university, what can I say? Then went to practice in Chicago, and I was there for 7 years in private OBGYN practice. Decided that the weather really wasn't for me and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and went into private practice there. So I've always been in private practice in OBGYN. Then I decided to take a break from Atlanta and go to a small town in North Carolina called Silver and practice among the Cherokee. I don't know whether you can say Indians anymore, but anyway, among the Cherokee. And that was for 2 years. And what happened then was that I went through a divorce and was back in Atlanta, continued in private practice, and then decided that it was time for me to stop practicing OBGYN. My main interest at that time was playing guitar in a garage band. We played gigs and we had a great time. And the name of the band was called The Clinic, made up of 2 anesthesiologists, an obstetrician, and then 2 lay people. We had a great time. Did some work as a surgical assistant. And then I decided, well, I had to get back to OBGYN and went to look for a job. And I'd been out of practice for 2 years. And then a lot of people were saying, oh, you're going to have to retrain. And I thought to myself, oh, no, I'm not. I've done it for a long time. And it's kind of like OBGYN is kind of like riding a bicycle. So I applied for a job as a laborist. I don't know whether you all know what a laborist is. It's a person who just does obstetrics and works for the hospital and takes care of all walk-in patients and private patients where their private obstetricians can't get there on time or they just don't want to come in. What can I say? I met a most wonderful woman here in Las Vegas. I'm now, after 5 years of being a laborist, decided, hey, it's time to give up. It's time to enjoy life. And so that's what I'm doing. Have a beautiful home here in Vegas, and Vegas is not what everybody thinks it is. It's not just a strip. It has a very nice suburban feel to it, wonderful restaurants, wonderful entertainment, and that's
110 degrees.
Oh yeah, today's temperature was 110. And you know, that's about it. That's it. I know Ray Seamus, who lives in Phoenix, thinks that's just about par for the course. So that's the deal. I have 2 grown children, 2 boys. The one is married with 2 wonderful children, a boy and a girl. So that's basically me. You just basically got a quick tour of the United States by just following me around the United States. That's it.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So yeah, you mentioned Ray Seamus. I guess he's your next door neighbor. So I guess he's up next, right? I did see Ray on the list. Where are you, Ray? Oh, maybe not. All right.
I don't think
So-
Ray is in attendance.
Okay.
He's not in the list.
Ray's on mute.
Yeah, I thought I did see, yeah, there at the bottom, it says he's on his
It
phone.
says, no.
Oh,
Okay, unmute your phone, Ray. All right, well, if we can get hold of Ray, we'll get back to him. So we now move over to the golden west coast of
Can you hear
the
me?
United States of America. Ray, is that you?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, go ahead, Ray.
Well, I can speak now, but my video's gone off. But anyway, good to see all you guys. I probably would not have recognized many. And I'm sure you won't recognize me either. as time passes. Anyway, a brief summary. We all graduated, as you know, in 71. I specialized in surgery, did my FRCS. I was in Johannesburg for 5.5 years. And when Soweto broke out, I left the following year and came to the United States and redid a residency at the University of Rochester, where I worked for Seymour Schwartz and Rene Mengi. I did 4 years there, then I was on faculty. I had an opportunity to open a trauma center in St. Joseph's Hospital, in one of their major hospitals. And I came here to do it and stayed on there after that and did my boards, obviously, in general surgery and also trauma and critical care. And we opened basically one of their major branches for Creighton Medical School. We have a new medical school there on campus. And this we opened about 10 or 12 years ago. And I was a professor of surgery on faculty there, but joined the hospital full time. As you know, most private physicians are going out of practice and the hospital is taking them all up. And I was in private practice doing general surgery with endocrine and obviously trauma, and joined the hospital. I retired 3 years ago and married to my wife, Erna, for 46 years. She has a doctorate in psychology, and she practiced as that for a number of years, and both of us have retired. And we have 4 sons and 4 grandchildren. 3 of my sons, interestingly enough, live in Los Angeles, and 1 in Havasu City. So that's basically a brief summary of what has been going on in my life since I left South Africa.
Thanks, Ray. Good hearing from you. So I see Aubrey Palestrand's picture there. He wasn't on the list, but I think you're also somewhere in that, but I wouldn't call it the Midwest, but in that hot state where it's 110 degrees. So go ahead, Aubrey.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful seeing everyone. And gosh, it's 50 years since I've seen all of you really, except Ray. Ray lives around the corner from me, and Jeff Isaacs, who's another alumni in our class, also lives here in Phoenix. So it's a real pleasure reacquainting myself, but I must say, you guys have all changed since I remember you in 1971. Well, as far as my history is concerned, I did my radiology residency in Johannesburg, and then in '76 we emigrated to the States, spent 6 years in academics in Boston, and then decided to go into private practice. I was really interested in interventional radiology, and there was a unique position in Phoenix that would allow me to practice interventional radiology and also be in a private practice. And it's been an extremely rewarding specialty in terms of innovation, in terms of finding new things. I've patented a number of devices that is used in interventional radiology. So I've really had a tremendous career. Retired about 3 years ago. I'm still doing some consulting work on the side. Married to the same woman for the last 51 years. And we have 3 children. Each child has 3 of their kids, so 9 grandkids in total. Interestingly enough, 2 of my 3 children went into medicine. My son decided that he wanted to rather be an entrepreneur, and he's done very well in that area. So all in all, I can look back and say it's been a terrific ride. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Aubrey. So you mentioned Jeff Isaacs. He was going to attend. I'll just say a brief word. There was a death in the family, so he sends his apologies. Didi, I don't know if you did a video, but anyway, it would have been good to see Jeff. Maybe we can catch him for the next 5-year reunion, which Pat will talk about at the end. All right, moving over to the famous west coast of the United States of America. Janine, you up north, you were in San Francisco, so why don't you take it away, Janine?
Janine, okay. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all. And I actually live in Oregon. So I left South Africa in '73, pretty soon after finishing my internship. And I came to California. I went to Stanford and studied pathology for 3 years. And during that time, I had to do parts of my internship again. And I realized that I really wanted to be working with people. So I switched into psychiatry and did a residency in adult psychiatry and then another one in pediatric and adolescent psychiatry. I've worked in student health, and I would say all of my working time has also been in private practice. I moved to Oregon in '89, and since I've been here, it's been private practice. And I've worked at Jasper Mountain Center, which is a residential treatment center for severely abused children. And just within the last month, stopped working there. So that's my professional life. And in terms of interests, I am a weaver and I spend a lot of time weaving. So that's my story. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Janine. So just the other Gordon in our class was Lenny Gordon, hand surgeon in San Francisco. I have been in communication with him. He unfortunately couldn't attend, so hopefully I'll get the video. So I'm going down alphabetically. Eddie in Palm Springs. Adrian Graf Radford, yeah.
Pete Dizzler, I can see you drinking. Cheers.
I don't know what happened with my video, but it's, oh, I've got it. Here we go.
It's Australian Shiraz.
Right. Hello.
It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone who put this together. It's just absolutely amazing. I'm amazed at how well everyone from our class has done. It's incredible. And this is 50 years later. Anyway, I, as you know, graduated with you guys. Became a table doctor with Arnie, and Arnie and I wrote our primaries in Edinburgh, and we passed that. And then at that time, I started doing an orthopedic residency with Louis Solomon, and we decided to leave the country. And we came to Los Angeles, came to UCLA, and I repeated a residency at UCLA and also some lab work and stayed on the faculty for a few months. Anyway, I was a clinician, not a researcher, and ended up going to Palm Springs, which is in the California desert, into practice. I joined one of my partners. The two of us, we started a practice there and built that into probably one of the biggest orthopedic practices in the state right now. We are a multi-specialty practice, orthopedic specialty practice, my specialty being joint replacement. Did joint replacement, been in the desert now for 40 years and been in the country for 46 years. I was honored actually to replace the knees of one of our United States presidents who actually did extremely well. Thank God. Otherwise, it was the end of my life. And
wasn't Trump, I hope.
No. No, he's come to South Africa to have it done. Anyway, I've been married for my 51st year now to the same woman. She is in real estate, and she's one of the top real estate ladies in the desert. Been doing this for 26 years. Keeps me in the way I like to be kept. I retired about 7 or 8 years ago. not because I want to retire. I couldn't stand anymore. I've had major back problems and heart problems and whatever, and had 7 or 8 back surgeries. Don't do that. This is an orthopedist telling you that. Anyway, I am still very involved with the hospital. I sit on the board of the hospital. I'm vice chairman of the foundation. I collect a lot of money still for the hospital. So my brain still works, although the body doesn't work that well. It's been an absolute pleasure to see you guys, and we should do this more often. And I'd like to make sure that we all get our emails and stuff like that. Please let's send it to us so we can contact each other and talk to each other. I have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. I have a son who's a district attorney, and I have a daughter who's married to an orthodontist, and we have 2 grandchildren to get there. All well, thank God. And that's as much as I can tell you.
Thanks,
Thank
Eddie.
you.
So Les Claff, I think you're down in alphabetical. Let's see the next one. Still there, Les? Les was on.
Oh, well, can you hear me? I think. Well, it's great to see everybody. It's wonderful to see everybody. One of the things that strikes me looking at us all is how few women there are among us, because the medical schools nowadays, I think excess of 50% of the graduates are women. So the whole way medicine has changed over the 50 years. That's one sort of fairly remarkable difference. As far as my career goes, I did house jobs. First of all, I don't know if with Barbara Goldberg, Wolfowitz, we were together in Barlow's ward, and Les Strick. I don't know, people in LA probably know Les. He's a pulmonologist there. And then surgery, pediatrics, and then with Ceftal, and started becoming interested in endocrinology at that time. And after the senior house job, we went to England with an idea of maybe staying. While I was there, I did my MRCP, but we decided that England was not for us, and my dad was sick. And so we came back to South Africa, but at that point, I decided not to, I decided I liked the ocean, and we decided to go back. I applied for a job as a registrar at Cape Town, which also had a very strong endocrine division at that time, with the idea of eventually going into endocrinology, which I did. Also did a PhD in Cape Town, was on faculty at University of Cape Town, and then got recruited in 1983 to University of Washington in Seattle, which is where we live now. It was to participate in a very, very large NIH sponsored trial called the DCCT, which is the Diabetes Control and Complications Trial, because in the 80s, people were not clear that actually blood glucose changed the outcomes of diabetes. And this was the sort of seminal study to prove it, which it did. Anyway, I was at the University of, I was lucky enough at that point to be able to go straight from faculty in Cape Town to faculty at the University of Washington. I didn't have to do any training here at all. And I was able to get my license right away, which was amazing, because it turned out that Washington was one of only 3 states in the union where you could get a license without a US or Canadian residency. So I was very lucky, but it also meant that I can't transfer to any other state, because I still would have to do a residency even at this point in my career. Anyway, so we've been in Seattle for 38 years. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. This is a wonderful city. When we came, it was a one-horse town, but Microsoft arrived, Amazon arrived, Starbucks was a single store down in the market when we started. Costco had 1 store. Anyway, the city now is booming, and it's a major high-tech area. And we love it because we are surrounded by mountains. So we go hiking, and we ski in the winter. I play golf. We've been married for 50 years in March. We were married for 50 years in March. My wife Denise was a labor and was an OB nurse, postpartum nurse at one of the hospitals. To go back to my career, I was at the university for about 6 years. Then I decided to go into practice. When I went into practice, we started a clinical research section of the practice. And after about 10 years of practice, we were doing so well in the clinical research that we made it into a separate company. And we built it up. And about 3 years ago, I sold the company. We were able to we had to work for it for 3 years. And that 3 years just ended, and I've now fully retired. So we are now just traveling. I'm not doing any consulting. I'm not doing any medicine. I'm not reading any journals. I'm done. And anyway, that's my story. But it's just wonderful to see everybody here. You know, just to put in a word, you know, some of the people who've passed away, some of my very best friends, especially Jeff Cole, Ian Siegel, and Harry Copans. But I had the pleasure of going to Jeff Cole's youngest daughter's wedding about a month ago. It was in Montana, so we drove there. And she was only 7 when he passed away. So it was pretty special to be able to still stay in contact with the family and go to the wedding. And that's the story. And hope to see some of you again soon.
Thanks, Les. So I've been in communication with Rashid Kaji. I don't know if that's you, Rashid, the iPhone number 8. If it is, unmute and go for it.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, is that you, Rashid?
Yeah, can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So we graduated in 71. And then I did my residency at Coronation, where we worked together, remember? And Adrian was there as well. I spent 2 years there and then 2 years at Bera. In between, I did 1 year of general practice, which I hated, which drew me back to, well, I just landed up doing anesthesia by default. I did my primary in London and then finished my fellowship in 77. I was in private practice in Johannesburg for 6 years, which I really enjoyed. And then after 6 years, that's in 84, decided to pack up and emigrate. So I landed up in Seattle. I spent a year at Children's Hospital in Seattle. And I spent another 2 years at the University Hospital. I think I had met Les at some time there. I must say those 3 years were great because I learned how to ski and sail there. After that, I moved to Oklahoma for 5 years, where I was on faculty in a residency program. And then I finally made a move west to California. And I've been since 93 there, 93 in California. I was in private practice for about 18 years. Actually, I'm still in a kind of private practice. It's just a multi-specialty practice of 5,000 doctors, you know, Kaiser Permanente. So I've been there for the past 10 years. I plan to step down from Kaiser and not retire, but go into part-time practice. I think that I just feel the need to remain professionally active as long as possible. But though, you know, just on a scale down basis. I've done a lot of traveling, done a little bit, not not with anything with a great passion. Traveled a lot, did a bit of ski, did a bit of scuba, do a lot of snorkeling, cycling. That's about it. So I have 3 sons who all became dentists since they, I think quality of life seemed to be more important to them. No night work, no weekend work, no public holidays. And the 3 of them often work together in one practice. The one is an endodontist, the one is an implant specialist, and the one is a family dentist, but he does a lot of orthodontic work. I have 6 grandchildren. I think that's about it. Not very interesting. I just wanted to say what a great pleasure it was. Arnold, remember we met, we had a reunion exactly 30 years ago in Albuquerque. Well, it was in Albuquerque, wasn't it?
It was in Santa Fe. Yeah, I'm going to talk about it at the end.
Was it in Santa Fe?
Santa Fe, where 10
Okay,
10 of us
Santa
got
Fe.
together.
And we were 50 participants there, and it was all a live participation. So that was awesome. You know, I wish we could have replicated that between 92 and now. You know, it's a pity we didn't. I think we should. I think we all just about. Seems like everyone's just about retiring, or you know. So this probably not many reunions ahead. So I think we should do this more often.
Thanks, Rashid.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so I don't know, William Taylor was going to take part. I don't know if I don't recognize him here. I have seen him a few years ago, so I don't think he's a participant. So I've been asked to read a message from Ray Fripp, who's another one of our classmates, who's in Tampa, Florida. So he says, I am currently retired, 8 years, and living in Tampa, Florida. Last employment was with University of California, San Diego, and Rady Children's Hospital as a professor of pediatrics, pediatric cardiology. My area of interest was in electrocardiography, including fetal echocardiography. I was the director of the echocardiography lab for 9 years. Prior to working in San Diego, I was retired for 5 years and lived with my wife on a 40-foot sailboat, which we sailed from San Diego to Brisbane, Australia. I was in private practice for 14 years in Albuquerque, New Mexico, before my first retirement. I completed my pediatric cardiology training at Yale New Haven Hospital in 1980 and was an associate professor at the Pennsylvania State University for 5 years before moving to New Mexico. My hobbies include photography, mainly wildlife, especially birds, travel, and all the other usual stuff retired folks do. My wife and I had 3 children and 5 grandchildren, most living in the Tampa area. Sorry, no video. Okay. So I think that pretty much covers the USA. If I miss somebody, throw a frot tomato at the screen. There you go, frot tomato. All right, otherwise I'm handing over to Pete, and he's gonna do the Oz group. I learned a new word, Oz.
Yeah, and America has managed to take an hour and a half. So no, we'll have to move it. Keep going, guys.
Hey guys, welcome. I think that I compete with Keith as having the biggest beard, almost. Well, I haven't got a moustache. I'm variably called Paul Kruger or a rabbi, so I'm actually neither. So great to see everyone. We have 12 people living in Australia and New Zealand, 5 in New Zealand and 7 in Australia. And we have 11 of the 12 present today. So that's probably a record. I'll start with me. And before I start, I just want to actually again thank Pat Spain because she did such a fantastic job. Okay, the highlight of my life, including my career, has been my marriage to Sally. I did have a rather short not successful marriage. Some of you may remember the person I married, and but I've been married to Sally for 46 years. We have 4 kids and 7 grandkids. I don't compete with, it was Jonathan had 9. I think someone else had 9. But we got 7. We left South Africa 35 years ago. We live in Melbourne. It's a lovely city, but the weather's not the best in the world. All our kids and all our grandkids live close by. There were 2 daughters within 10 minutes walk. Medically, my career has been marked by a lack of adherence to any particular path. I've actually really been always willing to explore outside my path, which probably means that I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none, but also, in fact, maybe I just get bored quickly. So I did my internship, like all of us. My first job was with Pat McPhail and Derek van der Merwe, which sounded like an ethnic joke, the 3 of us. We then were at NEH doing surgery with Mike Leibovitz, Jock Lewin, Alan Rothberg, and Marion Diaga, and we somehow managed Cedric Bremner. And then I actually, 1972, I had a bouncing 1-year-old daughter, and life at home was challenging, and I needed to get involved in participate in parenting. So I needed a job that was no weekends, no nights. And Tom Bothwell very kindly offered me a job doing research. And so I spent 2 years in a Man of Iron. And actually, that was unintentionally kickstarted my academic career, because suddenly I had a PhD, which nobody else had. It's all unintentional. I then became a nephrologist at the Joburg Gen, and then I moved to Cape Town, to Kruitske, where I was a nephrologist, because I always wanted to be in Cape Town. And I really got involved in the fact that my patients, dialysis patients, were not rehabilitated. None of them were working or doing anything. And I got involved in rehab, and I ended up having a 6-month sabbatical in Israel because they were the experts, and lived in a kibbutz. It was great fun. And then came back to Cape Town, started a rehab and geriatric program, and then moved to New Zealand in '87 with Palmerston North, joined by Anthony Gear in '88. And then I was offered this a job at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. I was recruited for that only time in my life I've been headhunted for a job. And I took on this job as a senior job at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. And I really stayed there after that. Although in the last couple of years, I've been involved in setting up a new clinical school, a regional clinical school in Bendigo, which is an hour and a half outside of Melbourne, an old mining town where actually Andy Girdwood's grandmother comes from, for what it's worth. I retired about 2 years ago, sort of. I still do medical legal reporting in my own time, usually at night with a glass of single malt in my hand. The lawyers seem to love me mainly because en route I picked up a professorial title which does well in court. But otherwise, it's a very easy way to just carry on, as Keith said, blood money, and to carry on earning something. Outside of work, well, I do a lot of walking and riding a bicycle, all short distances, and recently cheating with an e-bike. I'm an expert babysitter, although some of my kids, again, are too old to be babysat. I failed medical school because I've only played golf once, and that was a father-son's thing. Anthony Gear's son and my son went to the same school. Anthony gave me a 5-iron and a putter and said, that's the grey white ball that you hit. And we stopped counting, my son and I, after 200 strokes. There was 4 holes or maybe 3 holes. I've also skied only once and I fell over and haven't been back. So I failed medical school in those events. So wonderful to see you guys. And that's it. I hope I was close to 3 minutes, not too far away. Now let's start with New Zealand, because that's east, going in east to west. New Zealand actually is east of Australia. Before I came, I thought it was south, but it isn't. And the first alphabetically is Antgear in Palmerston North.
Thanks, Pete. Can you all hear me?
Very well.
Very quickly, or as quickly as I can. After I finished my internal medicine training in Joburg, I did 2 years in an immunology lab under Arthur Rapson and Mike Q. And after doing that, I was met by Tom Bothwell, who told me I was now the rheumatologist at the Joburg Gen. my training was fairly unconventional. I learned about inflammatory arthritis and orthopedics from Louis Solomon and Sid Biddulph. Hi, Pat. And about autoimmune rheumatic diseases from Dave Salant, Tony Myers, and Werner Biswoda, who had started an autoimmune clinic at the Joburg Gen, which Peter Disler then took over with some involvement from me. I also spent a year in London where I did some clinical rheumatology, but also worked for a year in the immunology lab there. In 1988, I had a call from Peter Disler, who invited me to Palmerston North. And so I've now spent the next 30 years in Palmerston North doing clinical rheumatology. I've now retired. Rosemary and I have 3 children. We have 7 grandchildren, 2 of whom I share with Neil Middleton. And as some of you know, I'm obsessed with sport. In 1988, I managed to win the veterans section of the Two Oceans Marathon. And in 2000 and 2001, I became the first person in the world to play a round of golf in the new millennia. We weren't quite sure whether the millennium was 2000 or 2001, so I had to do both. And I now am doing my best, rather slowly, to write my father's biography. And that's my story.
Thanks very much, Ant. That's a wonderful story. Now, I notice I'm the only guy drinking a glass of red wine, but I guess that tells everything about me and put into my story. Alphabetically, the next person is Theo Gregor, who's in Hamilton in the Waikato. Theo, you somewhere there? I did see you.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you. Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. Got the unmute. Good. Well, I must say I'm amazed at what's happening here, and seeing all of you. Most of you I haven't seen for 50 years, basically. I've kept up with some old friends, notably Kevin Fisher, who was a co-houseman of mine, and Keith David Spitz, who now is in America, as you heard from him. Where is he now? I can't see him.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
here.
there he is, Keith. And it's been really wonderful. I just want to say, Raymond Shamos, do you remember when we last saw each other? We'd just written the fellowship in Edinburgh, the final fellowship. Yeah, and Zoom, you were gone, and Zoom, you're back. That's maybe that's why they call it Zoom. You know, I think it's really amazing, and I'm very impressed. Well, just to go through, I don't want to bother you too much. I was going to say that I've been a bit of a gypsy, but I can see I'm actually in company with a whole bunch of gypsies, because just about everybody has moved just about everywhere that I've heard. I did, as I said, after house jobs. I actually worked for a while in Johannesburg, and I won't bother you too much with that. But I got interested in ENT. Keith influenced me in that, and so I ended up going and doing a fellowship in London, and then a fellowship in Toronto, with a main interest in head and neck surgery. So I returned to Johannesburg after that. I had spent a while in London, as I said before, and I actually got married while we were in London. So we've been married now for 42 years. That's to Chris. She was called Harrington. I went back to Johannesburg in 1982 to 92, spent 10 years there working again in the field, and left in 1992. You may remember that the what's his name was hitting the fan pretty much in 1992. I was then offered a job at the Dutch Cancer Institute in Amsterdam, And there I did mainly head and neck cancer work until 95. And then being a crazy South African, I was offered a job back in South Africa, and I went back to a chair in Stellenbosch, which I did for 5 years. And so that at the end of that time, there was a job that came up here in New Zealand, and we've been here ever since that time. So that's just a quick resume of that sort of thing. More important things, I think, things like family and hobbies and all that sort of thing. And you know, I've always been interested in art and woodwork, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment, because I think an important thing once you retire, and I have retired now completely since last year in June. It's quite difficult to examine ENT patients when they're wearing masks. You know, that's a problem. The other thing is, it's an occupational hazard. You may know that many of our colleagues, ENT colleagues, particularly in Italy, during the first outbreak there, many ENT surgeons died of the disease because it's so easy to catch it, because you're dealing with the respiratory area. So I just as an aside, I'd have to say one other thing is, although I did ENT, I never actually learned sign language, but it occurred to me that if you could do sign language, you could have some good side, conversations with your mates. Like I could be speaking to Adi here on my left side by side, and we could have a conversation, independent of the other ones going on, using sign language. But I never learned sign language, so that was too late. As far as other occupations are concerned, I was never particularly good at any sports, but I took up cycling quite a time ago, and I then did some pretty serious cycling at some stage. Done the Argus, gone back to the Argus in Cape Town at least 4 times. The last time with my son and daughter-in-law, which was a lot of fun. And but what became more of a passion to me was skiing. And it is amazing that I actually learned to ski quite well, and I could ski just about any piste. No, I'm not talking about off-piste, because that's a different thing. But and so our colleagues in Brisbane had a meeting for the last 15 or 16 years, ENT meeting in Italy, in the Dolomites in Italy. It's the most gorgeous area you can imagine. And for skiing, it's an absolute nirvana. And of course, we've been kept away from that by this dreaded contagion that has attacked us for the last 3 years. And may it soon go away, never to come back. I wanted to say something about the wood. I think it's good to have a hobby as you get to my stage, and as a lot of you have retired. I notice a lot of you are still valiantly working away, like my friend Kevin Fisher and others we've heard from today. But I think if you do, it's nice to have a hobby. And I always had this feeling I wanted to do sculpture in wood, and that's what I'm doing now. That's my main interest, is wood sculpture. If any of you are interested, you can see my website. It's a very easy one. If you remember my surname, Gregor, it's gregor.org.nz. And I think, yes, I wanted to say yes about the children, of course. So we had 3 children. My daughter Kelly's 40. She's just had her first child. Well, no, a year ago had her first child, and she's now pregnant for her second child. And my middle daughter is Fiona, and she's pregnant for her first child. She's going to pop probably next week. And my son Riney, his wife had a little boy about three months ago. And so we were all very late starters, it seemed to me, because I know a lot of you got like dozens of grandchildren. But the funny thing is that last year, at the beginning of last year, we had no grandchildren. And at the end of this year, we will have 4 grandchildren. So we're going to catch up pretty soon with all of you. Yes, so Kelly is that sort of a person who works in corporates, and Fiona's a nurse. My son Riney is a budding orthopedic surgeon. He's got to do about 3 more years to get his final. So lots of nachas, and so far no tsuras, I would say. Thanks very much, guys. All the best.
Thanks, Theo.
Thanks, Theo. Thanks very much. Alphabetically, the next of the Saurus and Nachas people to talk to us is Hamish Hamilton Hart of Auckland. Hamish, oh, there you are.
Yeah. Unmuted. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Hamish. Yes.
Excellent. So it's great to see you all. I never thought this would happen, and Patsy, of course, must be congratulated on what she's organised. Now, very briefly, I did my time at Baragwanath, and I had time with Barlow and the renal unit at Auckland, and neurology at Baragwanath, and then I decided to go to the Australian outback and spent a year there, which cured any desires I had to stay any longer. And I came to New Zealand. And in New Zealand, they said, well, you mustn't do cardiology, you'll never get a job. You must do rheumatology. So I trained as a rheumatologist. No sooner had I ended my training than they said, we're opening a new hospital and we need somebody to go and run the coronary care and general medicine. So my career really has been very general, but more recently has become dedicated more to imaging cardiology. I retired at the end of last year, but because of the COVID waiting lists, I'm back at work just about full time and probably will stay so for the next 18 months probably. Family-wise, well, I'm married to Diana, who's a nurse practitioner, and you don't, I think, have nurse practitioners like that in Australia, but I think you do have in the United States people who take a great deal of responsibility and take a lot of the work off us. She was very successful. We have 3 children, a son who's a large animal veterinary surgeon and who trained at Cornell, or did a PhD at Cornell, but then had to drop it because he married somebody in the FBI and had to follow her around the States. So he's now a maths teacher, and they live in Maryland, outside Washington. I have a son who's an electrical engineer who gave up electrical engineering and lives in the Japanese Alps, where he has a hotel. And I have a daughter who is a patents clerk and who lives in Auckland. So a reason for continuing to work, of course, is to pay the airfares backwards and forwards from all these different places. Anyway, in brief, that is my story, and I think I've done it in about 2 minutes. It's great to see you all, and this is a wonderful occasion.
Hamish, well done. That certainly was brief, exactly what I expect from Hamish Hart. And yes, they do have nurse practitioners here, by the way. Next in this, Pete Jankovic, sorry, of Auckland.
Hi there, can you
Pete,
hear me?
Can hear you, yes.
Good. Briefly, I did my house jobs at Baragwanath, moved to the States for a year to New Haven, Connecticut, and then back and completed my pediatric training, mainly at Baragwanath. Ended up at the new hospital, new Johannesburg Hospital, running the oncology department there. Went into private practice in South Africa. And then in '94, we moved to New Zealand. And my last job here was in Auckland at the North Shore Hospital. Married 51 years now to Jennifer, and 2 wonderful kids and 3 grandchildren. And that's basically my story. So that is short and sweet.
That's incredibly short and sweet, Pete.
A new
nice to see you.
record holder. New record
That's
holder.
right. A new record. Okay. And the last one is Neil Middleton, who lives on an island, Waiheke Island, near Auckland. Neil.
Unmute, Neil, wherever you are.
That should be better. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's good.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Neil.
Okay.
I can't hear you anymore, Keith.
You just managed to mute yourself
Neil?
again, Neil. You muted yourself again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No. Okay, I won't touch it. So congratulations, guys, who've organised it. I'm going to keep this very short too, as is my way. I trained in anesthesia, went at Coronation and the Joburg Gen, and by pure luck, I happened to be the first anesthetic registrar who trained with Donald Sinclair in cardiac anesthesia at the Stradel. And some years later, that led on to him inviting me to join them as they started a new cardiac unit in Utrecht in the Netherlands. So I took my young family and Ruth, my wife, who I'll come back to in a while, and we had 9 years in the Netherlands doing both pediatric and adult cardiac anesthesia, cardiac surgery with Donald Sinclair and Francois Hitchcock, whom some of you might remember. Steve Woolley also was one of our surgeons, and he trained some years ahead of us, and some of you might remember him too. 9 years on, we were getting a little disaffected with the Netherlands for all sorts of medical, political reasons. And we were approached by Carl Muller, who we remembered earlier, to come to New Zealand. So that was 87. And we moved to New Zealand, and I worked at Green Lane Hospital, also mainly in the area of cardiac anesthesia. And that's really where I have been since. And Green Lane moved its cardiac department to the Auckland Hospital eventually, and we moved too. I'd had another 25 years of doing some pediatric cardiac anesthesia as well as adults, and my life was really revolved around cardiac anesthesia. During that time, I headed up the cardiac or the anesthetic department at Green Lane and National Women's, actually, for that matter. And worked doing that until I retired at age 67, about eight years ago now. We have also been married for 51 years, like many others of our group. We got married in final year, and we have two sons, one of whom, Stephen, who designed the house we now live in Waiheke. And the other one, Jonathan, he's involved. Stephen's an architect, obviously. And the other one, Jonathan, he did electrical engineering and is involved more in the IT world now. We have 4 grandkids. And as you heard from Ant, they and us share 2 of them. So that's where we're at. Like Theo, I have moved. I have done a lot of woodwork in my time. I did it as a young guy. And unlike him, I don't do sculpture, but I've done a lot of cabinet making. I've made a lot of furniture and for friends and family and neighbors. And we live in a great community here where everybody's close and enjoy our lives very much in our retirement. So I'm going to leave it there. And thanks once again, guys, for organizing it. Wonderful to see you all. And I'm going to listen on with interest.
Sorry. Thanks very much, Neil. That finishes the 5 people who live in God's own, as they say here. And we now move on to Australia, where the first person alphabetically, interesting enough, in the middle of the alphabet is Michael Leibowitz.
Is that all right, Ruthie?
Sorry?
Yeah.
Neil, you can now unmute yourself.
Mute yourself,
Hi guys,
yes.
can you hear? Hi guys,
Yes,
can you hear
Mark,
me?
that's fine, yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Well, I must say, it's really strange seeing everybody again after all these years. You know, I saw a T-shirt which said something along the lines of, it's odd to be the same age as old people. And it looks like some of us have aged more rapidly than others, and some of you look quite youthful and some of us look less youthful. I was a reluctant medical student, and my path was not clear-cut. There were some guys who had planned their future like a military campaign, but mine was nothing like that, and I wandered and meandered along. My main interest when I was a medical student was in psychiatry. And I thought I would become a psychiatrist, but after doing my house jobs with Pete Disler, we left to go overseas to Europe, and we lived in a motor caravan for a year. And then I got a job. We were traveling around, and then I got a job through my old mate Andrew Margot in psychiatry in London. And God, that was such a shock to the system. And while I still keep an interest in the subject, the actual practice of psychiatry was awful. I ran up screaming in the opposite direction. So I came back to South Africa, and I really had no idea what I wanted to do, except that I didn't want to be a GP. And the reason for that was I wanted to have more certainty with what I was dealing with. So I needed to specialize. So I thought I'd go into pathology. And I spent 3 or 4 years, I think, at the SAIMR. And that was very valuable because I think pathology is the basis of medicine. But I knew it was not really for me. And all along, I was trying to get into something that suited my temperament, which was dermatology. And there were no jobs available. So eventually, I got a job at Barra, and I did dermatology there. Barra was wonderful. Those were the happiest years of my life, or my medical life. I also did my pathology at Barra, which was really a great.
I don't know. I assume so.
Hi, Neil. Hi.
Yeah. Carry on, Mark.
Okay. Well, I had an inkling that we were going to immigrate. By 1988, the situation was getting totally out of control. It looked like the country was settling down for a civil war, and it was very difficult to immigrate, to get a job anywhere. I actually tried to the States, and I spoke to an immigration lawyer there, and he said to me, the people that we want the least in America are, in this order, prostitutes and then doctors. So I knew that the outlook was quite grim. And then somehow Pete, I don't really remember the exact details, but Pete, I think it was you that put me in touch with an ad in the British Medical Journal. Okay. So to cut a long story short, I moved to New Zealand, and I stayed in New Zealand for 19 years as practicing as a dermatologist, and then we immigrated again to Australia to be with the rest of my family. My biggest asset in my life has been my wife. I've been married for 54 years. The most important thing, thank you. I think I've got the record, guys. 54 years. I was in 4th year when my wife and I got married. We met at school. We met at high school. She invited me to the high school dance. Yeah, and I've got 3 children, and I have got 9 grandchildren, and we all live very close together. Family for me is paramount. I have always been interested in painting, art, that is, and I have had a couple of exhibitions, but in my old age, I've discovered that I can write poetry, and I've been writing poetry for the last 3 years. I've got a book published, which, if you're interested, can be obtained from Amazon. Got a plug in here for a sale. And yeah, I lead a wonderful life. Sydney is a wonderful city, and I'm very happy. And I'm glad to see that so many of you have made successes of your lives, and are also very, very in a very good place.
Thanks very much, Mark. I should get some kind of award for recruiting Anthony Gear and Mark Leibovitz to the Antipodes. I have read Mark's poetry book, and I can recommend it. Mark, thanks. The next person alphabetically is actually Alistair McKendrick. Right? Is Mackie, are you there? I've had a number of emails from Mac. I mean, good close contact with him. Mac, I can't see your name on the list. Dee Dee, is Alistair McKendrick around?
I don't see him, but he was here at the beginning.
I'm here. I'm here. I'm here.
You're here. Yeah.
Wrong
Go for
name.
it, Ricky. Pam
Sorry,
Gabriels.
I've got my wife's name.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Heck,
why I was late.
I'm-
That's why I had difficulty getting on, because I used my computer and then my phone, and I have issues with IT. So I asked my wife to set her computer up, and that's why her name's on the base. But anyway, yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome, Pam. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for getting me in, and thanks, Pat. Hello, Pat, and Sarah, and Hamish, and everybody. I mean, it's so good to see all these people. I haven't seen any of you for 50 years. Well, I saw Theo Gregor at a meeting, and I think Keith Davidge Pitt at a meeting once, and went up to Brisbane and saw Martin. Martin, I visited him in his house on stilts. He was a hippie. He wore kimonos and things. He has a good life, and I think that's about all. Those are the only students or fellow students.
We had dinner. We had dinner together in Melbourne once.
Peter,
Jackie.
of course, I've seen Peter twice. Sorry, yes. So it's been 50 years that I haven't seen so many of you, and I'm just reminded what a wonderful time we had at medical school. We were so lucky. It was a great 6 years, and I regret a bit that I drank so much, because I don't remember a lot of it clearly, which is unfortunate. But anyway, it was a great time, and met some great people. And the trouble with leaving countries, I mean, I left Zimbabwe to go to Johannesburg to med school, and so lost all my school friends, and then left Africa, and so lost all my medical student friends. So that's the sad thing of traveling the world, unfortunately. But anyway, and so I did my 2 years in South Africa. I worked at Barra for a while, and then went to England and studied general surgery, and we didn't like England, so tried to get to Canada. They didn't want us, and ended up being a 10-pound POM. So I arrived in Australia, and here the salary was double, and the weather was nice, and so settled here, and I did my 3 years and became a resident pretty quickly, and went along the general surgery track. And then it's funny how you do things in life. I ended up being a doctor because my dad said to me one day, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I'm not sure." He said, "Well, why don't you be a doctor?" I said, "Well, okay." And that's how I ended up a doctor. And when I was doing in med school, about fourth year, someone said, "Are you going to do medicine or surgery?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. I'll just watch what these guys do." And I remember standing on all the ward rounds and the medical wards, and talking about patients, and pretty serious stuff. And then did my surgical stint, and the surgeons seemed to have fun in theatre, and then they sat around in the tea room telling jokes. So I thought, yeah, I'll be a surgeon. And so followed general surgery for a while. And then I was in Australia, and was in Brisbane for a couple of years, Tasmania for a year, and then ended up in Perth. And I was looking for a general surgery job, and I bumped into a South African ENT surgeon in the corridor, and he said, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to find a general surgery job." He said, "Well, there's an ENT registrar job available. Why don't you do that?" I said, "Well, I'm not sure. I never thought of doing ENT." Anyway, so I put in an application. I was the only guy who applied, so I ended up doing ENT. And the only thing I knew about ENT was, I remember writing a little essay on epistaxis for our ENT examinations, and passed at medical school. So anyway, so it was a fast learning curve. Anyway, so I've had a great career in nose and throat surgery, and been mainly in private practice in Perth for 40 years, and still in private practice, though I've almost given it away totally now. And I'm following Theo and a couple of others doing some medico-legal stuff now. And yeah, I've got all the kids are in town, and lots of grandkids, and they're all doing well, and they're all close by. And I've got a block in the bush, is where I am now, with some fruit trees and veggies, and the kangaroos around, and play a bit of golf, and have a great life. And I've always had a great life, and I'm still having fun. Anyway, it's lovely to see all you guys are also successful, and very talented people, poets, and woodworkers and fantastic sportsmen. Anyway, it's lovely to see you all, and hope we bump into each other again sometime. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mackie. I mean, one is always amazed by how little people have really changed. I mean, I was flashed back to 50 years ago, and I could have heard Mac chatting in the pub, but nothing's changed, Mackie. Right. The next one alphabetically is actually Brian Morris, who I wasn't aware was in Australia, but I discovered in my quest that he's in Toowoomba, which is in Queensland. So, Brian.
I can't get on.
You're on.
Am I? Can you see me? I can't see me.
I can see you and hear you, Brian.
Oh, good.
All the way
Excellent.
from Toowoomba.
I just want to reinforce the thing that that Mac was talking about. I think he did drink too much at med school, because I don't remember him either. The other thing is that, having a look at all these gorgeous old faces over here, none of whom I would have recognized in the pub, I think I'm the only one who hasn't aged out of all of us.
Can I say something? Can I say something?
Yeah.
Brian, you were famous. I remember you, because we had a ward round, a cardiology ward round, and there were 6 or 7 of us around a bed with the curtains drawn, and there was a 17-year-old lass with a rheumatic heart, and you were asked to listen to her heart, and you put the stethoscope on her chest, and you forgot to put the stethoscope in her ears, and I remember that clearly.
Yeah, I'm amazed you remember that, because that wasn't in Johannesburg. That was when I was in London. I was at the London hospital, and I was the local student set me up, because I had come from South Africa, and I think she was an Asian young girl. But you're quite right. That's exactly what happened. I felt like such a dork, but I got all the signs.
You must have done it more than once then.
So it's interesting that all of the people on this list have specialized in one way or another. There are no GPs here that I can see. So I guess a lot of the other people who aren't on this conference now did do GP. Anyway, the long and the short of it is this: is that I came out to Australia in '77 after spending my houseman years in Grays in Pietermaritzburg, where Peter grew up. And then from there did military service, and as part of that military service, I volunteered to go up to the border area. So I spent 9 months up in the Caprivi and southern Angola and Oshikati and all of those areas, which I absolutely loved. And then went back to SA, to Durban, where I worked for a couple of years in pediatrics, and got friendly with Professor Pat Smythe, who was at King Edward. He was the professor of pediatrics. And I wanted to continue with pediatrics. Options were to go to Transvaal Memorial or to go to Red Cross. He said, go overseas, and advised that I go to the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne. So I applied to the RCH in Melbourne, and I also applied to the Adelaide Children's Hospital. I didn't think I stood a hope in hell of getting into the Royal Children's. And they had some computer elective system there. And as it happened, I got a job at the Royal Children's, and ultimately ended up spending 3 years there. But we were only coming over for 2 years. I was going to do 2 years there and leave. While we were in Durban, the Australian consul came around to our residence and said to my wife, Margie, and myself, I'll tell you about it shortly, that don't apply for a 2-year visa, apply for a permanent residence visa, because you never know what's going to happen. What great advice that turned out to be, because we came out, I got onto the teaching program at the Royal Children's, did my primary through there, and then had to do the secondary part of the fellowship, and ended up in Adelaide to do that. Qualified in Adelaide, got my FRACP, and then went into private practice for 20-odd years or something, which retrospectively might not have been the best move of the whole lot. But I did say at the time that I've never been money orientated, and I did say that when I get to the point where I'm seeing my patients as customers, I was going to hang up my stethoscope. And in fact, not only did I get a bit burnt out, but I got to that point, and at the same time, a job came up in Toowoomba as for director of pediatrics at the local hospital. And I thought that might be a challenge. Maybe that's what I needed, was a challenge. So I took it. We came to Toowoomba for a week to have a look at the job. The first day I looked around in the hospital, I went back to the motel where we were staying. I said to my wife, this place is the pits. We're going home tomorrow. And she said, I've spent the whole day driving around here. I just love it. We've got to stay here. So that's how I ended up staying in Toowoomba and spent 10 years rebuilding and redeveloping the pediatric unit, a bit like Peter had to do in Bendigo. And stayed here and for 10 or 12 years, whatever it was. And they said to me, look, you've got 10 months of long service leave. You better take your long service leave. I'd never, ever had leave. I'd been in private practice for 20 years, never had leave at all. And I had this long service leave, which I thought, that's great. So I did that. And at that stage, I decided, no, I'm young enough. I'm going to retire. So I took the 10 months and built up my workshop also as a woodwork workshop. So there's quite a lot of woodies on this site, which is quite interesting. So I eventually retired on the 10th of the 10th of the 10th, just worked out like that, wasn't intended, just worked like that. And since then, I've been playing in my workshop. I do a lot of bird watching. I do a lot of bushwalking. We've got a big off-road caravan. We spend a lot of time in the outback. I can't understand why that put Hart off staying in Australia. That's the best place in Australia is the outback. And before I left Durban, I married Margie, who used to be Margie Van Reenen, who actually was also Miss Medic a year or two before, but she was a couple of years behind us. And we've been married for 46 odd years, got 3 boys, including twins, and 4 grandboys. So our whole Morris family is just full of XYs. There are no X's, all XYs. And they've all got golden retrievers. My wife, Margie, has just bought a new golden retriever puppy, which is not a good thing. But he's a lovely dog, but you know, we still got a lot of traveling to do. And I go back to South Africa every few years. We go straight to the bush. We've been to South Loanga a few times. We're off to South Loanga again at the end of next month for a couple of months in South Africa. We're going to Galagadi and down the west coast of the Cape, Kruger Park, Karoo National, wherever, all the parks. So we just spend our time out in the bush while we're there. So we'll be there for about 2.5 months and then back here, and we'll see how we go from there. But that's about the sum of it for me, guys.
Thanks very much, Brian. Great to hear. Toowoomba, by the way, for people who don't know, is in Queensland. It's between Brisbane, south of Brisbane, top of a hill. I think it's a nice little town anyway. Now, next person on the list, and I hope you aren't doing too badly with time, Keith. Are you frowning or are you okay?
We are going pretty slowly, so we've got to move it up a bit because South Africa still needs a turn. Okay, so how many more are on your list?
3. Two more. Okay. The next is my close neighbor, Ian Richter, who also lives in Melbourne, and who actually was in the Air Force gymnasium with a hell of a long time ago. Ian, you were there. I saw you earlier.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah. Can
Ian,
you hear me?
You say Jeanette, Ian, but that is Ian.
Yeah, I know. It's that's my wife. Oh, you've made me Ian. All right. My story is that after qualifying in 1971, I did house jobs in medicine and surgery. Then I did pediatrics and gynecology with the intention of going into general practice. Now, general practice didn't quite work out. And one day I was filling up my car at a garage and I bumped into Ian Schmalman, who said to me, he's doing radiology. And I remember my very words were, what's radiology? I have no idea. But anyway, my parents were very friendly with the guy, professor of radiology, who was Errol Levine. And I went for an interview And he said to me, I've got one post left for you. You can start next year. So that was my career in radiology. I married Janet in 1971. We have two daughters. The eldest daughter is an occupational therapist. And I remember her saying to me, I met someone from your class, Professor Disler.
At Cedar Court.
And it was at Cedar Court. And she's still working as an occupational therapist. And my second daughter, Tracy, did a BA, BSc. She has now gone into marketing and is quite successful in marketing. We have 6 grandchildren, 1 grandson and 5 granddaughters, 3 from each of the daughters. And after that, I worked, I came to Australia in 1979, worked as a radiologist for a few years at a place called Western General Hospital out in Footscray. And then I was invited to join a private practice. And I've been in that practice. I was there for about 30 years and retired a few years ago. Our passions now are golf and bridge. We play a lot of bridge online, as we do, but we also play bridge with a couple of other couples. My golfing prowess is not very good, but I still persist. Yeah, I think that's probably where I am. We both retired, and we retired at more or less the same time, and that's when we decided to take up golf. So
thanks very much, Ian. And yes, I remember your daughter very well. Please send them my best wishes. That's about 10 years ago, I think.
Yes.
20 years ago.
It was about 20 years ago.
20 years ago, sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
the last on the list is Martin Scher. Someone described you as a hippie. Martin, I think you and I once shared a bed in Paris. With maybe Les Clapp was also in the bed. It shows how successful we were with getting women to sleep with us. I ended up with Martin Scher.
Best night of my life. Okay, am I on? Okay, I did my residency at Baragwanath, and at the end of that couldn't get to Europe fast enough, basically to party. I wasn't interested in work. I used to travel around Europe all summer and do locums for the winter in England. The only thing that, and I found a few things scared the hell out of me: anesthetics, obstetrics, pediatrics. So I decided I'd do a bit more of each of them and then keep doing locums for the rest of my life. Anyway, I went back to Baragwanath, offered me a job, and I went back as an anesthetic registrar and found I liked it more than I thought I would. Did 6 months there, then went back to Europe for another year of drinking and having a good time, and then went on to Australia because it was the country where you could stay the shortest time to get a passport, and I was quite keen to get rid of my funny little green thing that they didn't let you into an awful lot of countries with. I got an anaesthetic job in Perth. Enjoyed that a lot. Took up scuba diving while I was there. Did a lot of diving with the West Australian Museum on old Dutch wrecks and things like that, which was really good. At the end of my training, one of the guys I trained with was living in Cairns, which is where the Great Barrier Reef is, and
I was diving a lot. So he asked me to, oh, sorry, I did anesthetics. That was it. And I came to Cairns because they needed somebody to help sort out the anesthetics here. Enjoyed that. Lovely little town. Worked here for 3 years in the public system. Then the private system offered me a job. I took it on the grounds, on the condition that I could take a minimum of 3 months a year off to go traveling. And they agreed. So that's been my life since then. We've traveled minimum of 3 months a year somewhere. All of you bike riders there, I don't know if you remember, but I used to ride to uni half the time, and I'm still riding now. And done a lot of riding all around the world. It's a pretty wonderful way to go. The stupidest, longest ride I did was Lhasa to Kathmandu via Everest Base Camp, which was over, I think we did 7 5,000 meter passes. It was interesting, but it was fun. Anyway, had a great time. In private practice, I ended up running the private practice for the last 30 years I was here. Fortunately, chucked it in just before COVID because I couldn't stand the bureaucracy of it all anymore. I still really enjoyed the anesthetics, but the paperwork and the crap that went with it was got me down. So I chucked it in, and then COVID came along, and I was very glad I chucked it in. Soon after coming to Cairns, I met Kathy, my other half. We've never actually got married or had children or done all the regular things. We just have a good time. And unfortunately, we don't have grand good times. We only have grand dogs. We have a lot of time with our dogs. So we do a lot of traveling. Took up skiing in my 40s, love it. If any of you skiers, if you haven't skied Japan, go, especially up to Hokkaido. If I skied Colorado for years, I'm not a good skier. If you take up skiing in your 40s, you can't be a good skier. But I can get down anything on the mountain, and I never ski on piste. It's only through the trees. Anywhere else we can go. And I'm still alive, so it can't be that bad. Do we come back to Africa pretty often and hit the game park somewhere or other? Love photography. That's about it. Love having a good time, and I'm really glad to see so many of you guys are doing the same. Have a good one. And
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Martin. I actually had dinner with Martin about 10 years ago in Cairns as well. So I guess we can keep in contact. Okay, well, I think that does the whole Australia-New Zealand crew. Sorry, Keith, it was taken longer than we thought. It was quite hard to, I think everyone gave a great talk. And I will hand it over to the Saffers, to Keith, and I will withdraw and mute at this stage.
Okay, so thanks everybody. Sorry, some of us have still got COVID. I was 2 days ago, I couldn't get out of bed. I'm a late bloomer, I got COVID, and I'm still coughing and spluttering. So don't kiss me, no matter how much you feel the need, just don't do it. Right, so we've got, I think, probably eight people that we haven't yet done with in South Africa. And I'll start right away, alphabetically. Let me tell them who I've got. I've got Martin Davis, Gordon Duncan, Kevin Fisher, Andy Girdwood, Patricia Hayne, we've done her, Nan Jolly, Patrick McPhail, Alistair Orford, and Alan Rothberg. So those are the people I've got on the list to go. And I'm going to start first with Marty Davis. You are going to be held to 3 minutes counting now. Martin, unmute.
I'm unmuted. Hello. Hello.
How's it, Marty?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you, Marty. Go for it.
Thanks, Keith, and I wish you rapid recovery. So now I can have 10 minutes. Yeah, my memories go back to the wonderful time we all had from 66 to 71, and after we completed our students time, I did my first job with Professor Myberg, and then with Prof. Bothwell. I always wanted to be a pediatric or at least an adult cardiologist, and that didn't happen. So we did our jobs together with Gregor and with Fisher, and they might remember that on the last night of our internship, we had a real raucous evening where, in fact, one of our consultants developed a Mendelssohn syndrome from being so plastered. After that, I had to do my army training, and then when I came back, my intention always was to be an adult cardiologist. That didn't happen. I did pediatrics. I was at Baragwanath and I did the circuit. I really had nothing all that more exciting. I wanted to be the cardiologist and ended up by being a pulmonologist and doing allergy. And that's I've been in practice for the last 40 years. I've been married now to Anne for 50 years as well, and we have children. My eldest daughter is a clinical psychologist, and she's married to a pediatrician who works at Rahim Musa, that's the old Coronation. My second daughter is a speech therapist and works at a special remedial school. And my son is an industrial psychologist, all deciding not to do pediatrics. I've been in practice for 40 years, and I still remain in practice. We also all cut everything down at the end of when COVID arrived, but slowly I've got back and I'm still working. That's my story. We love going to the bush for photography. At the moment, we're in Pilanesberg and watching the sun coming up right now. That's my story. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Marty. I thought I might have to discipline you, but you've been amazingly disciplined. Well done. You've set you set the tone. Gordy Duncan, a hard act to follow. Gordon.
Don't worry, Keith. I will be even briefer. Hi, everyone. It's really great to see you all. I just want to first mention Peter Disler, who we started off together in 1961 at DHS. So that's a pretty long time.
The same class for years.
For years and years and years. From my side, pretty boring. After graduating, I stayed on and did anesthetics in Johannesburg. Much of my time was spent at Coronation Hospital, and I'm very delighted to see two of my mates from there, Neil Middleton and Rashid Kaji. Very nice to see you. On getting my FFA, I immediately joined a group practice, in those days in Jeppe Street, and stayed with them for 40 years, after which I retired 4 years ago. I married Lorraine at the end of 5th year, having met her in Joss Lannon's ward in 4th year. And things got going at a party at Neil Middleton's house. So we've been together for 51 years and in the same house for 42 years. We have 4 children, boy, girl, boy, girl. The girls are the only ones that are married. The boys are bachelors. The girls have given us a grandson each. The youngest of our 4 children is the only one who followed in my footsteps, and she's now a junior consultant in anesthetics at Barra. And with thanks to Pat for nudging me along to join this group, I say thank you, and that's about it.
Thank you so much, Gordy. Please, South Africans, you don't have to stick to me to time exactly, because I'm not as tough as I look. So if you want to push it a bit, the Americans pushed it, the Australians and New Zealanders pushed it. South Africans can also push it a bit. Right, but that was wonderful. Thank you, Gordy. Next on my list alphabetically is Kevin Fingers Fisher, who I know professionally. Kevin, are you around?
Yeah, can you hear me? Are you there? Are you guys there?
Can hear you. Yes, go for it.
Okay. Hi to everyone. It's unbelievable to see all of you again. Hell, Pete, you look like Paul Kruger for sure. Terrific to see all the guys again. I just cannot believe that this has happened. And I'm very grateful to Patsy. I've seen Keith a couple of times. Gordon Duncan I've seen a few times. And it's always nice to see Keith Davidge. And of course, Theo, my old mates from those days. First met Keith sitting on his trommel in the army in 1965. So we've been mates for a hell of a long time. Anyway, as far as I'm concerned, after house jobs, after house jobs and doing some senior house jobs, I fell into ENT because Keith and Theo sort of seconded me for 6 months. But then the job that I really wanted came up, and that was in urology. And I followed on Sinman into the urology side of things. And it's interesting because his daughter became a urologist, and my second daughter has become a urologist as well, and is now working here in Johannesburg, next door to me. So we're in practice, not quite together, but in association. So I've been in private practice since 1983 in urology, and I'm still pretty active. And thank goodness for that. I am still married to Anne-Louise, and we've been married 51 years now. And we got 4 lovely daughters, fantastic women, and they've given us 5 granddaughters. So I don't know who it was who was saying that the only XYs was at Bryn Morris, but in this side of the world, we've only got XXs in our family. I think those X chromosomes eat the Ys and just spit them out. So we love life. We've had a very good life in South Africa. We still love life. We love the children. We go to the bush quite often. And basically that's it. Still active, and I continue and hope to be active for still quite a while. But that's us here, and thank you for giving me the time. And I just cannot believe it's been absolutely fantastic to see you all. I hope it continues.
It's wonderful, Kevin. Please don't retire, not just yet, okay, for various reasons. Okay. I need you. Right. And then that was great. Have I got Andy Girdwood next? If you are muted or doing things, Andy, yes, no? Nothing, no. Can't see. Okay, I'm moving on then. We'll come back.
Sorry, Keith, excuse me interrupting. Andy is on here, but he's on his daughter-in-law or somebody, a woman's name picture, because I also thought he wasn't on, and I found him on my phone because I spoke to him last night, and he said he was definitely coming on. And then he said, no, I'm on. So I don't know where he is. Hey.
Okay, I'll give him another second, otherwise we'll come back between each one. Okay, so I think we'll do that. So
there he is.
Where is he? Go.
Craig Brown. He's
Craig
called
Brown,
Craig Brown.
Unmute yourself and choose a pronoun. Oh no.
That's his son-in-law.
Yeah. So, somebody tell him, Keith, can he hear you?
I don't know.
He doesn't know what to do.
Yes, I'm requesting for him to unmute.
Yes.
Thank you,
hear me
Dee
now?
Dee.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. This is my son-in-law, Craig Brown. So it's me, but it's lovely to see all you guys. I certainly wouldn't have recognized you. I did my house jobs at Barrow with Hamish, and then went down to Edendale, Pietermaritzburg, to do O&G, which I did for a year, and thank God changed my mind from doing O&G. I did anesthetics, a bit of general surgery, and then went over to Scotland to do medicine, because one thing I knew nothing about was medicine. So I went over there, went to a lovely part of southwest Scotland, Dumfries, which is where I did general medicine and did the membership after 2 years. Then it's the question of what one did, what subspecialty one had to do. I felt with my sort of surgical sort of background, they were looking for physicians who had a surgical bent, and gastroenterology was just starting with endoscopy, so that seemed to be the field I should move into. And so I went across to the States for interviews for GI fellowship jobs, and I went to a number of interviews, and then I had to come back to South Africa for a year to wait for the fellowship to start. And my wife was a Cape Townian. I'd met her in Maritzburg, and she wanted to go back to Cape Town. So I came back to Cape Town, went on the general medical circuit, registrar circuit, and then the job came up in Chicago. And my wife was pregnant with our second child by this stage, and I made one of those decisions which I've never regretted, that I actually decided not to take the job in Chicago, which everybody thought I was crazy, but I was very happy. I got into the GI unit in Cape Town, worked for Professor Solly Marks, who was one of the doyens of gastroenterology in South Africa. And after 3 years of working in the department, he invited me to join him in private practice. And I went into private practice in Cape Town and have been there for 38 years. I've been very happy in private practice in gastroenterology. I've also kept a connection with the GI unit, that I used to spend one day a week teaching ERCPs and teaching techniques, colonoscopies, etc. But I've enjoyed that contact with the academic institution. Privately, I mean, I worked for 38 years, and I retired almost 2 years ago. And that's given me more time to play golf, which I really enjoy. And I've just come back from a golfing tour of Scotland, where we played St Andrews and all the great courses, which is great. We do a lot of walking. My wife's a botany enthusiast, and we spend a lot of our time on the mountain. We also, like Pat, spend a lot of time on 4x4 camping holidays all over Southern Africa, which we really enjoy. We've got 3 daughters, and amazingly, they're all in South Africa. My older daughter worked overseas in London, but has come back, and she's quite adventurous. She's just come back from 3 months in Nepal and Papua New Guinea. I'm picking her up in the airport tomorrow. So they took a term off with their 2 kids and did that. The middle daughter spent 9 years, in Melbourne, where she became a physician, and then she was married to an orthopod, a Scottish orthopod, and they made a decision to come back here. So they're back in Cape Town, around the corner from us, and they've got 3 children. And then my youngest daughter went to Oxford and did a master's in economics, and she's in Joburg, married with 2 small children. And she's got to go over to Amsterdam to defend her PhD thesis. She's in health economics. For the rest, we're very happy in Cape Town and happy to be retired here. And I must say, it's great to see all you guys. I wouldn't have recognized you, as I said, but it's great to see you all. Thank you for Pat to organize it.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm glad we got you. That if I'd closed my eyes, I would have known it was you. Your voice hasn't changed at all.
Yeah,
you've changed a little, but your voice is exactly the same voice. Okay, so I'm going to move on. And the next on my list is Nan Jolly, also Nan Case. Nan, are you there somewhere? She's a lactivist of note. Where are you, Nan?
Haven't seen her, Keith.
I don't think Nan joined today.
I don't know why. She was keen, but anyway,
Yeah.
something must have cropped
Anyhow,
up.
I'm sorry. I know she when I say she's a lactivist, she has been very involved in breastfeeding politics, breastfeeding, practicalities, and an important person with encouraging that nationally and internationally. But that's I'm sorry we've missed her. So we'll move on now. Thank you to next on my list is Patrick McPhail. Patrick, are you there? Unmute yourself.
I haven't seen him. I haven't seen Pat
There's no
McPhail
Patrick.
either.
No Patrick on the list.
McPhail. We've got on the version 8, Patrick and Nan are on as coming onto the Zoom, and they were both on our last Zoom in last year, and I don't know where they are today. Anyway,
yeah, well,
find out.
I can put a wig on or try something, but I can't. If they're not here, we just have to move on. Sorry, they've missed out. Sorry about that. And then we've got Alistair Jock Orford. Are you around?
Hello, I'm around.
There, I can see. Alexandra. Sure.
That's Alexander. It's not the Conqueror. I want to thank Pat and Sergeant Major Bolton for running the show so well. Nice to see all of you after so many years. What amazes me is, despite all the early memory lapses, I remember all of you so well. Some of you less well, like we had a lot of cloudy times with McKendrick together, but I'm very glad to see Mackie again. Yes, my career has been this and that. I did after medical school. I decided after internship to go to Namibia and met and married a German girl there called Angelica, and we're still together after all these years. We then went to open the first private practice, GP practice on the Cunene, which was just before that war with Angola. It was great fun. And sadly, the war intervened. I remember seeing Morris at that time. He came crashing along with us, and we had a fearsome party, if I recall. After that, I went to Edinburgh and did my primary fellowship, and had always wanted to do orthopedics, and came back to Louis Solomon, where I did that, and went into private practice in Johannesburg, and got to know, but of course all the orthopedic division was full of our class, and many of my friends were there, and I practiced at the Brenthurst and later at the Kenridge, which is now the Donald Gordon, until 92, when I got an offer to start orthopedic setup in Botswana, where I've been for 30 years. We started a little clinic, and I'm glad to say that we've managed to turn it from 1 or 2 orthopods in a country. I've now got young Botswana chaps back with fellowships in arthroplasty and spines and hands. It's been a great journey, and I hope it's improved the lives of Botswana people. Anyway, that's the medical side of things. Angelica and I have 3 kids. We have an eldest daughter who's interested in doing her academic work on African children's literature, and gets them to tell stories and writes it up. It's very interesting and quite instructive. Many things that we're not sure we thought we knew are not the case, is not the case. My second daughter is an adventurous type. She was with guerrillas in Gabon, and then did a great walk from Kenya to Botswana with some Maasai and such things. Wrote a little book on that, which was worth a read, and is now collaring lions in Okavango.
That's
she has,
G-O or G-U-E, the gorillas.
sorry,
Gorillas.
I've gone too long.
No. I
No.
was just saying, is it gorillas or gorillas? Is she a...
No, gorillas. I didn't know which son-in-law.
The animal.
I didn't know which son-in-law I'd get, but whether it would be a gorilla or a Botswana or whatever. Anyways, he made a fellow from Francistown, and they've got 2 grandchildren and live in Maun and seem to have a very adventurous life. And my grandchildren are also adventurous in Maun, so that's interesting. And then I have a son who is working with macadamia nuts. He's running a macadamia nut operation for a family in Bundaberg. So he sort of joined the Australian crew. I must tell him when he gets an opportunity to go and visit Pete and Co. Anyway, it's very great to hear from all of you, and it's extraordinary. I'm glad to see that there are a couple of urologists and so on still around, that time to visit them soon. Anyway, thank you so much, and I wish you all well.
Thank you so much, Alistair. That was wonderful, and it was lovely to hear and see from you, and know that you're still here in Africa, and definitely of Africa. And you've put back into Africa with your children by the sound, but that's wonderful. Okay, and then last on my list is Alan Rothberg. I'm certainly kept the best till last. Alan, Dan, are you there? Unmute.
I don't see an Ellen in attendance.
Not. I hadn't seen his name come up. He was down to attend, but these things happen. So, yeah.
We do have one more person that I don't think has been called, and it's Humza Karim.
Okay. So
Sorry,
that's
I'm also on your list. I don't know if
Bob
and
Fox
Dr.
is
Bob.
also on the list.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
Bob Fox.
Yes.
Bobby Fox is there.
Can you guys hear me?
Okay, so we'll go with you first, and then Bob will wind the tide all up.
So I'm sorry I didn't RSVP. My daddy is Suleiman Karim.
Carry on.
Can you? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Carry on, Solly.
Yeah, Solly. He's been a cardiologist in Polokwane for 30 years. After Derry first did his internship at I think Coronation Hospital in 1972. Then went into private practice for a little while. Then went back to Barra, got his FCP in 79. I think he did it in 2 years. Then he got his exams. Then he was a consultant at Barra for a couple of years, and then moved to Petersburg and was in private practice for about 30 years until he retired 2 years ago. Now he's living with us, with his daughter and his son in Australia. Hi, Derry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Nice to see all of you. We see some faces because my daddy talks about all of you. So nice to see all your faces.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Bob.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go for us. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, Keith. It's Bob. Yeah. It's great to see you guys all, and I must congratulate you and Pete with your beards, first of all, and then with organizing this this conference, Patsy and Sayer, and them. It was really great to get everyone together, and nice to see some of the old faces, although I must confess I didn't recognize many, but did recognize Andy Girdwood's accent and Keith Fisher's enthusiasm. I mean, Kevin Fisher, sorry, not Keith. Although I'm last, hopefully not least, I don't want to go on for too long, but I've been a Durban boy, born and bred, and I'm still in Durban. I started, did my house jobs, went and did a GP locum in Alex Bay for 3 months, and then flew down to Cape Town and got onto the Pendennis Castle. If anybody remembers the castle boats, but I took the Pendennis Castle off to London. And 12 days later, I woke up in London, I think, after a raucous time on the ship with 3 Zimbabweans. We then hired a camper and I toured Europe for 9 months, just bumming around Europe and seeing the world. Then got back to London, did an anatomy demonstrating job for a year, did my primary and started doing surgery, came back to South Africa, got a job at King Edward, but then I virtually, then Yanni Lowe offered me a job in Cape Town. So we flew down to Cape Town and I did my surgical training there for 5 years in Cape Town with Yanni Lowe, Dave Dent, and Andy Girdwood may know some of the people down there. Went back to the UK, worked for a couple of years in the UK, and then came back to Durban and started a private practice in Durban from 83 till 2003. Then was offered a job in Bermuda, which is an island in the middle of the Atlantic, which is a fantastic little island, and spent 6 years there in private practice, working in Bermuda. And then came back to South Africa after that in 2010 and been in practice here for the last 10 years, but then stopped 3-4 years ago and now retired, living in Durban in Mount Edgecombe Country Estate, which has 2 golf courses, which I play regularly. And other hobbies are making model ships. I don't do the woodworking, but I do model ships, and puzzling, reading, etc., and going to game reserves and that. Nice to see guys like Bryn, who I also had that memory that Mackie brought up of the stethoscope around this young girl's breasts, and he was giving us all the stories about this sound and that sound. Meanwhile, it wasn't in his ears. And it was a very memorable thing there as well. The other small anecdote is my wife, Trish. Well, she was Patricia MacDonald, or Trish MacDonald, remembers Brian Morris very well from Gray's days. No more said, because Brian, if you don't, might remember Patricia or Trish MacDonald. She was a nurse in Gray's when you were a houseman, with the guys like Mike Quayle, and Mackie was around, I think, at Indale, etc. But those were some of the memories from our varsity days. And I also always remember Martin with Martin Scher, with Jock Lewin, Ray Fripp, Mike, and Christa Blanche. We always ended up in the back row of the class, because I don't know why, but we just had a whole team of us in the back row of the class at every lecture we went to. So there was some of the memories from there. Otherwise, we are well, retired, living in Durban and Mount Edgecombe, very comfortable and enjoying life. And thanks again to Patsy and the team for putting it all together.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you so much, Bobby. That was wonderful. According to my list, we've sort of done most people. So is there anyone out there who's hard done by, who hasn't had a chance? Didi, is there anyone where?
It seems everyone has spoken, unless if I've missed someone.
Anyone want to say anything out there and so on? Now, I think anyone who's bursting, it's been a very long and lovely meeting. It's now 9:15 in South Africa, which means we've been going nearly 3 hours. I think even the South Africans who were supposed to be waking up are nodding off perhaps from such a long meeting. It's been wonderful. And I don't want to cut it off like Sergeant Major Bolton gets accused of. Somebody has to be the bad cop. I'm sorry it was me, but anyhow, anyone want to add anything before I'm going to call on Disla to say the closing benediction? Rabbi Disla, who's doing a sort of a Catholic kind of a thing. Right. Anybody want to?
This is David. I would just like to thank Arnold for calling me with that surprise phone call about this meeting. I've been ecstatic about it ever since, and I'd like to say hi, and I hope to see everybody again at some point in the future.
Great, because we've where I think we've now got to, like, guys, I want to tell you, it's true, we're getting old, okay? I wanted to do woodwork. I've done woodwork my whole life. Now, when I want to retire and do woodwork, I've got macular degeneration and I keep chiseling myself and drilling myself. And so woodwork's not a suitable thing to do when you can't see. Okay, so do it. That's my answer. Nike says it, do it. Okay, you're wonderful. Don't put it off another day.
How do we get anyone's email addresses, phone numbers, etc.?
That's a good question. Didi, can you answer it, or Pat, can you answer it?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Everybody that's on the Zoom, as well as other people who aren't here today, who gave us their email addresses, will be sent a copy of this video, a video of this whole morning. I can't see anybody sitting for 3 hours watching it again, but you will get it, and you will get a list of everybody who gave their email addresses, because, you know, I don't know about in other countries, but here you're not allowed to give out anybody's email address. So it was a problem when we were organizing. We couldn't just send out a whole lot of emails. We had to do everybody individually and what have you. But you will be getting one. And anybody who doesn't get one, or in the next, say about 3 weeks, if you've heard nothing, send an email to Didi or to me, and we will find out why you didn't get it. As I said earlier, the WITS computer blocked a whole lot of people, because 20 years ago, when those people had filled in their WITS forms to give email addresses, when emails and that were coming in, they chose little blocks on this list to say, do you want to receive this mail or that mail? And a whole lot of people, and they were all no's, and you had to choose yeses. So a whole lot of people just left one that said faculty something. And all the WITS, so that meant that those people didn't want to get messages. So half of the invitations never went, because the WITS computer totally blocked out.
Patsy, we're going to have to time you out now.
Yeah,
you don't have to go into the
but you will be getting it. But if you don't, call us. Don't just let it be. We will sort it out. Okay.
Absolutely.
Can I add to that, Patsy, and say that there are certain people who are here today who aren't on the list, and therefore their emails won't be getting a thing. So I know Mark Leibovitz and Neil Middleton aren't on the list, and they need to write to Didi, don't they?
Pete, they are on the big list. That they are on the list, and we've got their emails. So everybody, they will all get the stuff, even if they only registered at the last minute. And as we said, it was like herding cats, getting some people like Neil Middleton. And then Keith said, Pete has to herd his marsupials.
Yeah, so Pete, Reverend Disler, will you like to say the benediction?
Yes.
Before we close,
I've
Pete,
never.
one sec. There are a lot of emails that are not on the list. So we got to, the list is not complete. So I've got certainly the US people. I don't think we have such restrictive laws in the US.
Dr. Sinman, if I may just add, for those who have not given written consent for their emails to be shared, they may still please email me their consent, and then I will add it to the already existing list. Dr. Greg, I see you have a writing there, but it's not quite clear. Should I add you to the list?
Theo, unmute.
Yeah, Theo, we've got your email. I've got your email. So.
Okay, but I want to be on the list, but I really think we have to make every effort. I can understand security laws and all these damn things, but you know, it's been all these years. We lost contact with a lot of people. I just made contact the other day with Adi Graf, and I hadn't spoken to him for 45 years. It was ridiculous. And I've been looking for an email and trying to find addresses for that one particular person. And I'm sure a lot of us have had that. This is the new age, and
Yes.
Having email addresses, that's not giving away a sort of, you know, anything sacred. I think especially for a group like us.
Okay, so DD is bound by the laws that govern the university departments, and the law in the land. But Pat and I can put together the bigger list outside of this, using that list and everybody else's emails, and we'll get it all, I think.
You know, definitely.
What would be useful too would be to get people's phone numbers too.
Well, if you can email people, they can always send their phone number in.
Yes, I think if we'll be lucky to get all the emails, I think we will get all the emails, but I think if we start with phones, I think we'll delay this into terms.
Well, so, if we check all the emails at the same time, you can put a phone number next to it. It's no big deal. It's not a lot of work.
No.
Yeah,
Adrian Graff Radford, say hi to Sid for me, please.
Oh, I will do. I will. He, in fact, went out and he said, "Oh, you're probably going to all go on late. I'll be back and then I'll come and say hello." And he had a message from Pete Disler as well. Sid says, "Pete, to you, do you remember the case he called you in for? And the diagnosis was non-diabetic diabetes." And he said, "What on earth is that?" Do you remember that case?
Yeah, it's one of the many bad diagnoses I made in my life, I think.
Anyway,
I don't remember, but I'm sure that if
we didn't know what it was.
It was me.
We
I didn't
thought
know
you
that.
were very clever.
Peter Disler,
Yeah.
say your prayer.
Well, there's going to be no prayers because I haven't said a prayer since I was in assembly in matric in '64. But I did say that I would come in the end and just really, if anybody had anything more to say. Only thing I would say is I'm at the age of 74 or 75 almost. I'm wondering whether 5 years is too long to wait. And perhaps I know it's a nice round figure. The only reason to wait for 2026 is because it's a round figure, 55 years. I'm distressed by the fact that by then people may have left. Sorry?
It's not an even number. It's not a round figure. Why don't we say 3 years?
I think it's enough. I think 3 years is long enough because I think by then people are going to be falling off. And I've so enjoyed today that I think that it'd be a great pity to do that again. All I was going to do is just say again, thanks to Patsy, because there are 5 of us on this list, and there was a lot of fun had with the famous 5 and the WhatsApp network. But really, it was Patsy. And Patsy, I'm not sure she slept for the last 6 months. I'd get, it's also fascinating. I get emails. Keith Bolton doesn't seem to sleep either. And I'd get emails. I'd look and say, to South Africa, 3 in the morning. I'd see Patsy and say, Beaton, 4 in the morning. And I sleep. But I think so. Let's say thanks to Patsy, you've done a fantastic job, and there's absolutely no chance you'll get out of it next time. It's your job.
I'm pretending to be Paul Davis.
No discussion. No discussion.
Yeah.
No discussion at all.
Absolutely.
It's all finished. Yeah.
What I say to the little old ladies who knit for the Prems in my hospital, the little old ladies from my church, they knit. And every time I go and speak to them in the old age homes and tell them, I say this, what I'm going to say to you now. Please, guys, don't die. Okay, thanks.
Well, that's a benediction. I can't think of a better benediction than that.
God
thanks
bless
again
you
to
all.
everyone.